Hold her down! I want her to feel this. Wade Prescott's boot slammed into the prosthetic socket. The carbon fiber buckled sideways with a sound like a branch snapping in winter. Grace Harmon crashed off her diner stool, hit the tile hard coffee, shattering around her in a brown constellation. Her crutch skittered across the floor, spinning twice before it wedged itself beneath the counter. Wade kicked it further away. Crawl for it, soldier girl. Show us how you served your country. 12 people sat in Nell's diner that morning. 12 people watched a 58-year-old woman with one leg hit the floor. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because in Blackwell, Oklahoma, the Prescott name was worth more than a veteran's bones. The front door opened. A man walked in. A German shepherd walked beside him. And everything in that diner changed direction the way a river changes when something immovable drops into its current. Grace Harmon always sat in the same booth, third from the door, left side back to the wall. Crutch leaning against the partition where she could reach it fast. Old habit. The kind you pick up when you have spent 3 tours by watching doorways for people who want to end you. Nell's Diner. Tuesday morning, 7:08. Same as every Tuesday for 3 years. Same coffee, same eggs over easy, same seat across from Earl Whitfield, who was 72 and had been sitting in that booth since before Grace learned to walk. You look like hell, Earl said. Slept wrong. You always sleep wrong. Then stop asking. Earl sipped his coffee, watched Grace over the rim. The woman's face was drawn tight. Dark crescents beneath her eyes, the color of old bruises. The kind of tired that sleep cannot fix, because it is not about sleep. It is about the thing waiting behind your eyelids every time you close them. The dust. The screaming. The half-second where your leg is still there and then it's not. Bad night, Earl asked. Softer now. They came by again. Around 2 in the morning. Who do you think Prescott's kid and his crew? Slashed my tires, sprayed something on the trailer, did not see what in the dark, found it at sunrise. What did it say? Grace looked at her coffee. The surface trembled from some vibration she could not identify. Maybe the floor, maybe her hands. Does not matter what it said. Grace. It said the word in red paint across the whole broadside, right where I can see it from the kitchen window when I make coffee. Right where the sun hits it first thing in the morning so I cannot miss it. Her voice did not change. Flat controlled pressed down into that place inside her chest where she stored everything that could not be allowed to reach the surface. 11 years of practice. 11 years of pushing things so far down they turned into something hard and permanent like coal under pressure. Earl's jaw tightened. His hands old and spotted the hands of a man who had carried a rifle through Korea at 19. Curled around his mug until the knuckles went pale. We should report it. To who, Sheriff? Ritter? Grace almost laughed. Ritter plays golf with Harlan Prescott every Saturday, drives a truck Prescott Petroleum pays for, lives on a piece of Prescott land with a Prescott fence around it. She shook her head. There is nobody to report to Earl. There has not been for years. There has to be someone. There is not. That is the point. That is how they built it. Grace finally met his eyes. You have lived here longer than me. You know how it works. Prescott owns the jobs, the bank, the sheriff, the county council. He does not need to break the law because he is the law. Nell Burgess appeared with the coffee pot. 62 years old, silver-streaked hair pulled back tight. She had owned this diner for 31 years since her husband came home from Desert Storm with a Bronze Star and a silence that ate him alive until his heart quit 10 years ago. She refilled Grace's cup without asking, the way she had done every Tuesday for 3 years. Then she paused, looked at Grace's face. What happened? Nothing. Grace Harmon. I have poured your coffee 1,000 times. I know what nothing looks like on your face, and this is not it, Grace told her. The tires, the paint, the third offer from Prescott Petroleum she had refused last week. The letter with the phrase alternative legal remedies printed in ink so clean it looked like a threat dressed for church. Nell set the pot down. Her eyes went hard as flint. How much this time, 80,000? For 40 acres in the trailer. That land is worth 10 times that with the oil underneath it. They know, that is why they want it cheap. And that is why they are leaning on me. Grace wrapped both hands around her mug. The warmth was the only thing that felt real. The offer letter said I have 30 days to accept. After that they pursue alternative legal remedies. That is the exact phrase. Alternative legal remedies. Meaning what, meaning Harlan Prescott will have his lawyers declare me incompetent. A disabled veteran living alone in a trailer with PTSD and no family. It is not hard to make that case in front of a judge who owes you his seat. They cannot do that. They have done it before. Ask the Taylors. Ask Mrs. Doyle. Ask anyone who sat where I am sitting and told the Prescotts no. Grace's voice dropped to something barely louder than the coffee cooling in her cup. They can do whatever they want, Nell. They have been doing it for 20 years. The diner door opened at 7:14. Wade Prescott walked in first. 28. broad shoulders and expensive jacket over a clean white shirt. The kind of man who had never earned a callus in his life, whose hands were smooth as paper because paper was all they had ever handled. Money and documents and the names of people who were about to lose everything. Behind him Trent, 26, built like a shipping container. Small eyes set deep in a face that did not think much and did not need to. And Nolan, 25. Lean quiet, the one you had to watch because he smiled when things turned ugly, the way some people smile at sunsets. The diner went cold. Not silent, cold. The kind of shift that happens when 12 people simultaneously decide to look at their plates and pretend they have not seen what they have already seen. A practice motion. A choreography of cowardice rehearsed over 20 years until it was as natural as breathing. Wade walked straight to Grace's booth. Stood over her. That smile, the smile of a man who had never heard the word no from anyone who mattered. Morning, Grace. Wade. How is the leg which one the one God gave me, or the one the government bought the fake one? Wade's smile widened. Heard you had some trouble last night. Vandals, maybe. Terrible thing. Get to the point. Wade slid into the booth uninvited. Pushed Earl's coffee aside like the old man was furniture. Earl's face went red, but he did not speak. Not yet. The point is my father's patience. Wade pulled out a folded document, laid it on the table like a card in a game he had already won. Final offer. 90,000. That is 10 more than last week. Consider it a goodwill gesture. Goodwill, because my father respects your service. He respects what you gave for this country. Your father has never respected anything that did not make him money. Grace did not touch the papers. And neither have you. Wade's smile flickered. Just a flash. A hairline crack in the porcelain, and underneath it something cold and patient like a snake under a warm rock. Careful, Grace. I have been careful my whole life. Careful got me blown up in Ramadi. Careful got me 14 months in Walter Reed learning to walk on a piece of carbon fiber that rubs my stump raw every morning before I even get to the porch. Grace leaned forward. Her eyes were steady. The steadiness of a woman who had looked at worse things than Wade Prescott and had not flinched. I am done being careful. I am not selling. Not for 90, not for 900, not for any number your father puts on a piece of paper. You can take these documents and fold them until they fit somewhere I am too polite to mention. You are making a mistake. I have made plenty. This is not one of them. Wade stood slowly. Looked down at Grace the way people look at something they have stepped on and not yet scraped off. You know what your problem is, Grace? You think that leg makes you special. You think losing a limb in a war nobody remembers gives you some kind of moral authority. He leaned down. His breath smelled like mint and money. It does not. It just makes you a cripple sitting on land my father needs. Earl slammed his hand on the table. Coffee jumped. Silverware rattled. You watch your mouth, boy. That woman is a United States Marine. She gave more in the one day than you have given in your entire worthless life. Wade looked at Earl like he was noticing him for the first time. Like a noise had come from a piece of furniture, and he needed a moment to locate the source. Who are you, Earl Whitfield? Sergeant United States Army. Korea, 1951. And if you call that woman that word one more time, I will show you what a 72-year-old veteran can still do with his hands. Wade laughed. Genuine. Delighted. The laugh of a man watching something amusing on a screen. I love this. I really do. The old soldiers' club. He looked around the diner at the 12 faces carefully studying their eggs and hash browns. Anybody else want to stand up for the one-legged wonder? No. He turned back to Grace. See, that is what loyalty looks like in Blackwell. A lot of people pretending they do not see a thing. Grace said nothing. Her eyes were on the table. Not submission, control. The kind of control a combat veteran learns when the choice is PA between staying calm and doing something that cannot be undone. Last chance, Wade said. Sign the papers. Walk away with 90 grand. Start over to somewhere else. Somewhere that does not need what is under your dirt. No. No, I believe I was clear the first 3 times. Maybe you need it louder. Grace looked up. No. Wade nodded slowly. The nod of a man confirming something he had already decided before he walked through the door. Trent. It happened fast. Trent grabbed Grace's crutch from the partition, yanked it away, threw it across the diner. It clattered against the counter, spun behind the register, and disappeared. Grace's hand shot out for balance. Too late. Without the crutch, she was anchored to the booth by a prosthetic leg that was not designed for sudden movement, a socket that needed time and pressure and positioning to bear weight. Nolan. Nolan moved to the diner door, leaned against it, crossed his arms. Smiled at the room. Not a word. Just a smile that said nobody leaves, nobody calls, nobody does a damn thing. Stand up, Grace. You know, I cannot stand without... Exactly. Wade grabbed the front of Grace's flannel shirt, hauled her out of the booth. Her prosthetic caught on the seat. The socket twisted against her stump. The nerve endings, the ones the doctors at Walter Reed had warned her would never stop screaming, screamed. Grace gasped. Wade dropped her. She hit the floor hard. Coffee mug shattered beside her head, brown liquid pooling around her silver hair. Eggs and toast scattered like debris from a small explosion. Her prosthetic leg bent at an angle that was not right, the socket grinding against what remained of her right leg in a way that sent fire up through her hip and into her spine. Now crawl, go to hell. Crawl to your crutch, Grace. Show these nice people how you get around. Show them what a hero looks like on her hands and knees. Grace did not crawl, did not move. She lay on the floor of the diner where she had eaten breakfast for 3 years, and she looked up at Wade Prescott with eyes that had seen Fallujah. Eyes that had watched friends die in sand so fine it got into everything, into wounds, into lungs, into the spaces between memories where the screaming lived. Eyes that had stared at a ceiling in Walter Reed for 412 days while surgeons rebuilt what was left. "You done?" Grace asked. Something in Wade's face shifted. That flash again. The cold thing under the charm. Nobody talked to Wade Prescott like that. Nobody looked at him from the floor with anything but fear. Certainly not a woman. Certainly not a woman with one leg and coffee in her hair and a prosthetic bent sideways beneath her. "Hold her down." Trent dropped onto Grace's chest. 240 pounds on a woman who weighed 130 soaking wet. Pinned her arms flat. "I said hold her down. I want her to feel this." Wade's boot connected with the prosthetic. Not the metal. The socket. The junction where carbon fiber met flesh. The place where every nerve ending that had survived the blast in Ramadi lived and burned and remembered. Grace screamed. The diner was silent. 12 people. 12 sets of eyes. 12 mouths that said nothing. A mother covered her child's face. A trucker looked at his plate as if the answer to everything wrong in the world was written in the grease. A young couple held hands under the table and prayed for it to be over. Nell grabbed the phone. Wade saw her. "Go ahead, Nell. Call the sheriff. Tell him Wade Prescott is having breakfast. See what happens." Nell's hand hovered over the receiver. She knew, everybody knew, Ritter would not come. And if he did, he would take Wade's side. He always had. For 20 years he always had. She put the phone down. Wade kicked again. The prosthetic socket cracked, a sound like a gunshot. Grace choked on the scream, tried to curl into a ball. Trent held her flat against the tile. "Sign the papers, Grace." "No. Sign them or I take what is left of your dignity right here on this floor. You are not taking anything from me." Grace's voice broke, but her eyes did not. "Not my land, not my leg, not my dignity. You can beat me on this floor every Tuesday for the rest of my life, and I will never sign. We will see." Wade raised his boot again. Earl Whitfield stood up. 72 years old, arthritic knees that cracked like rifle shots. Hands shaking so bad he could not have held a coffee cup steady if his life depended on it. But he stood, the only person in that diner who did. "I said leave her alone. Sit down, Grandpa. I will not sit down." Earl's voice cracked but held. It held the way old things hold, not with strength, but with the stubbornness of something that has survived too much to break now. "I watched men die in Korea so that boys like you could grow up free. I will not sit in a booth and watch you kick a Marine on the floor of a breakfast diner. What are you going to do about it, whatever I have to?" Wade laughed, looked at Nolan. Nolan laughed. Trent, still sitting on Grace, grinned up at the ceiling. "That is adorable. The 70-year-old cavalry, 72. And I have put down tougher men than you before my morning coffee." Wade took a step toward Earl. Fist clenched. The old man did not back up, did not blink, just stood there in his worn cardigan with his shaking hands and his Korean War posture straight as a flagpole. "'Cause some things you never unlearn. One more word, old man. One more." The front door opened. Not fast, not dramatic, just opened. The way a door opens when someone walks through it without hesitation, without hurry, without needing to announce what is coming. Because what is coming does not require an announcement. A man walked in. Brown jacket over a red and black plaid flannel shirt. Dark pants, weathered face, short dark hair going gray at the temples. He was 40, thought. But his eyes carried the weight of something older than years. The kind of eyes that had seen things most people only saw in the worst parts of their sleep and had kept them. Beside him a German shepherd. 90 pounds of muscle and training and quiet, coiled patience. Tan and black saddle coat scars across his muzzle. Shrapnel. Old. Healed white against the dark fur like roads on a map of somewhere terrible. The dog did not bark, did not growl. He entered the room and stopped, perfectly still, reading everything in 3 seconds the way he had been trained to read rooms in Kandahar and Mosul, in places where reading wrong meant dying fast. Every person in that diner felt the shift. The way you feel weather change before the rain starts. Something in the air pressure. Something in the frequency. Something that said the current in this room just reversed and nothing that happens next will be what you expected. Silas Drummond looked at the room. He saw a woman on the floor. A prosthetic leg twisted sideways. Blood from where broken ceramic had sliced her palm. A 240-pound man sitting on her chest. A crutch thrown across the room. An old man standing alone against 3 younger ones. 12 people frozen in their booths like exhibits in a museum of cowardice. And he understood everything. Not because he was brilliant, because he had been in rooms like this before. Rooms where power sat on the chest of someone too weak to push it off. Rooms where silence was a weapon wielded by everyone who did not want to get involved. He had been in those rooms in Kandahar, and in Mosul, and in places that did not have names, only coordinates, and the mathematics were always the same. That is enough. 2 words. Quiet. The kind of quiet that was louder than Wade's boots on the tile. Louder than the crack of a prosthetic socket. Louder than the silence of 12 people who had forgotten what their voices sounded like. Wade turned, fists still clenched. Face cycling through surprise, confusion, annoyance, and settling on the expression he wore when something unexpected happened, which was anger, because Wade Prescott did not do unexpected. "Who the hell are you?" "Nobody. Just came in for coffee." "Then get your coffee and get out. This does not concern you. The woman on the floor concerns me. You do not even know her. I know she's a veteran. I can see the prosthetic. I can see the crutch you threw across the room. And I can see 3 men beating a woman who cannot stand up." Silas's voice did not change. Same level, same calm. The calm of deep water, the kind that does not move on the surface because all its power runs underneath. "That concerns me." Ranger shifted beside him. 1 step forward, not a growl, not yet. Just a repositioning that screamed training, professional training, military training. The kind of movement that people who had never been around working dogs would not understand, and people who would recognize immediately and know exactly what it meant. Trent looked at the dog, looked at Silas. Got off Grace. "Trent, what are you doing?" Wade snapped. "That is a military canine, Wade. It is a dog. That is a military canine. Look at the scars. Look at how it is standing. I am not messing with a military canine. It is a dog." Trent took another step back. Wade turned to Silas, sized him up. The jacket, the flannel, the face that looked like it had been carved from something harder than the Oklahoma dirt they were standing on. "And you are what, some kind of hero drifter passing through who thinks he's going to save the day. I am a man who walked in for coffee and found someone being kicked on the floor." Silas pulled out his phone. Hit record. Red light. "And now I am a man with a camera." Wade saw the phone. His expression changed. Not fear, calculation. The machinery behind his eyes grinding through scenarios, outcomes, angles. "Turn that off." "No." I said turn it off. And I said no. Seems like people in this diner have been saying yes to you for a long time. Maybe they forgot what no sounds like. Silas held the phone steady. Perfectly steady. The way a man holds something when his hands have held things far heavier and far more dangerous than steadiness is just what his body does. I am reminding them. "Do you know who my father is? I do not care who your father is. Harlan Prescott. Prescott Petroleum. He employs half this county. And he raised a son who kicks disabled veterans in diners. Must be very proud." Wade's face went red. The charm was gone, the mask stripped away. What was left underneath was the thing Grace had always seen beneath the smile. The cruelty that money makes possible when nobody holds it accountable. The ugliness that power breeds when it has never once been told to sit down. You are going to regret this. I have regretted plenty of things. Stopping a beating will not be one of them. Wade looked at Nolan. Nolan read his boss, pushed off the door, moved toward Silas. Ranger did not growl. He did something worse. He lowered his head. His body went rigid, every muscle locked into a stillness that was more terrifying than any sound because it meant every ounce of energy and 90 pounds of combat-trained animal was aimed at a single point and waiting for permission to arrive there. Nolan stopped. "Call off your dog. He is not on anything to call off. He is standing still. That is his decision." Silas nodded toward Grace on the floor, just like it was her decision to say no. Just like it is your decision to keep walking toward a 90-pound military canine who spent 3 years in combat zones clearing buildings that were full of people who meant it a lot more than you do. I am not afraid of a dog. Then keep walking. Nolan did not keep walking. Wade made a sound in his throat. Frustration, fury. The sound of a man who had never been stopped by anything and did not recognize the sensation. "This is not over." "For her it is." Silas pointed at Grace. "You are leaving now. You do not give me orders. I am not giving orders. I am making an observation. 3 men against 1 disabled veteran. 12 witnesses. A video recording for 2 minutes. He held up the phone. "Every news outlet in Oklahoma is 1 tap away. Your move." The silence stretched. Wade looked at his crew. Nolan had retreated to the door. Trent was 5 feet from Ranger and looked like he wanted to be 50. "We are done here." Wade straightened his jacket, adjusted his collar, put the mask back on, for now. He walked toward Grace, crouched close enough that the camera would not pick up his whisper. "You have 30 days, Grace. After that, my father stops being polite." His eyes were empty. The way windows are empty in a house where no one lives. And so do I. He stood, walked out. Nolan followed. Trent gave Ranger one last look. The dog had not moved a single muscle. Trent left, the door closed. For 10 seconds. Nobody breathed. Then Nell moved. Came around the counter with a wet cloth and a new cup of coffee. Earl was already beside Grace, his old hands trying to help her sit up, shaking too hard to do much good, but refusing to stop trying. "Do not move her." Silas's voice was gentle now, different from the steel it had been 30 seconds ago. "Let me check the leg first." He knelt. His hands moved with a precision that came from somewhere specific, somewhere that involved other prosthetics, other stumps, other people who had left pieces of themselves in places the news had already forgotten. "The socket is cracked. You will need a replacement fitting." He looked at Grace. "Can you feel your toes? The phantom ones?" Silas paused. "How did you know I would know about phantom pain? Because your hands just checked a prosthetic socket, the way someone checks who has fitted them before. Who taught you I fitted prosthetics on soldiers who lost limbs next to me?" Silas helped her sit up. When he reached his duplex, he locked the deadbolt, fastened the chain, and drew every blind in the house. He paced the hardwood floors of his living room in the gathering darkness, the silence of the empty house pressing in on him from every direction. He pulled a heavy steel flashlight from the kitchen drawer and held it in his right hand, a pathetic weapon against an organized criminal enterprise, but the weight of it in his palm provided a microscopic and entirely irrational sense of security. "For what you did." "I did not do anything. I walked in and said 2 words. Nobody else even said one. That landed." Silas looked at the diner, at the 12 people who were now very busy eating their eggs, who had not moved, had not spoken, had not stood up, except him. He stood up. Silas nodded at Earl. "Damn right I did." Earl eased back into the booth. His hands were still trembling. "Scared out of my mind, but I stood up." "You were the only one," Grace said. "Somebody had to be." Earl picked up his coffee. It was cold. He drank it anyway. "Korea taught me one thing. The only thing worse than a bully is the crowd that lets him work." Nell brought fresh coffee, a new plate of eggs, a wet cloth for the blood on Grace's hand. She did it all without speaking because the words in her throat were the kind that would come out as crying, and she had promised herself she would never cry in her own diner. Not when her husband's picture hung on the wall, not in front of the flag. "You should report this," Silas said. To who Grace, Earl, and Nell said it simultaneously. Same words, same tired resignation, the resignation of people who had been let down by every system designed to hold them up. Silas looked at them. 3 people, 3 different wars, the same enemy. "Tell me about the Prescotts." Grace studied him. The way one soldier studies another, not for threat, for trust. Harlan Prescott owns Prescott Petroleum, biggest employer in the county. 300 jobs. Gas stations, pipeline services, drilling operations. Grace sipped her coffee. He also owns the sheriff, the county judge, the bank, the land office, and most of the commercial property in Blackwell. How long? 20 years. Maybe longer. Started buying influence when the first shale deposits were discovered. Now he is sitting on exploration rights worth $200 million. Grace looked at her hands. Scarred hands. Hands that had held rifles and tourniquets in the hands of dying friends. "My 40 acres is right in the middle of his pipeline route. Without my land, the pipeline cannot go through. Without the pipeline, his $200 million deal dies. So he sends his son to beat you into selling. Wade is the muscle, Harlan is the brain, the sheriff is the shield." Grace met Silas's eyes. "It is a machine, Silas. A perfectly built machine, and every gear in it is designed to crush anyone who says no. You said no 3 times. And they have done this before. To other people." Nell spoke. Her voice was iron-wrapped in linen. "The Taylors. Good family. Refused to sell their farm 3 years ago. One night their barn caught fire. Insurance denied the claim. Prescott's insurance company." She poured more coffee. "Mrs. Doyle, 76 years old, widowed, lived on 60 acres near the river. Prescott's lawyers had her declared incompetent. Guardianship assigned to a Prescott attorney. She was in a care facility in Tulsa within a month, dead within 6. Silas's jaw tightened. "Do not use his name in my diner unless you mean it," Nell said, and her eyes burned the way metal burns when you hold a torch to it long enough. "But yes, that is what they do. Anyone who says no gets crushed. And everyone who watches learns the lesson. What lesson? Keep your head down. Take the money. Do not make trouble. She looked around her diner at the 12 people who had not stood up. They learned it well. Silas was quiet for a long time. Ranger had settled at his feet under the table. Head on his paws, one ear toward the door, always toward the door. The habit of an animal who had spent 3 years in places where the door was never safe. I came to Blackwell 6 months ago, Silas said. To disappear. I was not looking for a fight. Nobody looks for fights, Grace said. They find you. I cannot promise anything. I did not ask you to. But I am not going to walk away from this. Grace looked at him. At the scars on his hands, at the dog under the table. At the eyes that carried something too heavy for one man and too important to set down. Why Silas did not answer for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked. The coffee cooled. Outside Oklahoma morning pressed against the windows like something trying to get in. I had a squad, he said finally. 6 men. Best friends I ever had. I-80 took them all. Same blast that gave Ranger those scars. He paused. The pause of a man standing at the edge of something he had not said out loud in 2 years. They died because they believed protecting people mattered. If I sit in this booth and eat my eggs and walk away from what just happened to you, they died for nothing. That is a lot of weight to carry before breakfast. I have been carrying it for 2 years. It is not getting lighter. Silas reached down and touched Ranger's head. The dog leaned into his hand without opening his eyes. But this morning, for the first time in a long time, I know exactly what it is for. Grace extended her hand across the table. Silas shook it. Firm. The grip of 2 people who had made decisions they could not take back and did not want to. What happens now? Nell asked. Now I need to make a phone call. Silas stood. Actually, several. To who? Friends. The kind that do not stop once they start. He walked toward the door. Ranger Rose followed shadow to shadow the way he had followed through every doorway and every dangerous building and every place the world had forgotten to care about. Silas. He turned. Grace was still in the booth. Still leaning on her crutch. Still carrying 11 years of war on a body that had been broken and rebuilt and broken again. A 58-year-old woman with silver hair and one leg and a set of eyes that would not look away from anything. Wade said 30 days. I heard him. He meant it. I know he did. So whatever I am planning, it needs to happen before then. Grace watched him. Silas Drummond. The stranger who had walked in for coffee and found a war instead. It will happen before then, Silas said. He pushed through the door. Ranger beside him. Oklahoma heat hitting them both like a wall made of light. Silas pulled out his phone. Dialed from memory. 2 rings. Booker. It is Drummond. Silence. Then a voice, warm and surprised and carrying the cadence of a man who had not expected to hear this number again. Well, the ghost calls. I need your help. Must be serious. You have not asked anyone for anything in 2 years. It is. Silas watched the road. Watched Wade's truck growing small in the distance, carrying its cargo of cruelty toward wherever cruelty goes when it's finished for the morning. I am in Blackwell, Oklahoma. I just watched 3 men beat a disabled Marine in a diner while 12 people watched and did nothing. Booker's voice changed. The warmth still there, but something harder underneath it now. Something that recognized the sound in Silas's voice because he had heard it before in briefing rooms and staging areas and the moments before boots hit dirt. How bad cracked her prosthetic. Kicked her on the floor, told her to crawl. Silas's jaw tightened. She is 58 years old, Booker. Lost her leg in Ramadi. 3 punks kicked her in a breakfast diner because she will not sell her land to an oil company. Who is the oil company? Prescott Petroleum. Harlan Prescott owns the county. Sheriff judges everything. Son Wade is the muscle. And the Marine Grace Harmon. Good woman. Alone, no family, living on 40 acres that Prescott needs for a pipeline worth $200 million. Silence. Silas could hear Booker thinking. The same sound he had heard 100 times in the field. A tactical mind assembling variables into strategy, the way an engineer assembles a machine from parts scattered across a table. What do you need, you? Finch, surveillance equipment. And the name of the best investigative journalist you know who cannot be bought. I am in Boise. Finch is in Portland. We can be there in 24 hours. Make it 18. That bad. Silas paused. And Booker. Yeah. These people have been doing this for 20 years. Burning farms, destroying families, having old women declared incompetent so they can steal their land. His voice dropped. I am going to stop them. With or without help. You are not without help. You have not been for 15 years. You just forgot for a while. Booker's voice warmed. The warmth of a brother who has been waiting by the phone without knowing he was waiting. 18 hours, brother. Hold the line. That is what I do. Yeah. It is. The line went dead. Silas stood in the parking lot. Ranger sat beside him, watching the road, watching everything, the way he always watched, not with fear, with readiness. The readiness of an animal who had learned that the world was full of things that required watching, and he was very, very good at it. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number, Oklahoma area code. He opened it. Mr. Drummond, my name is Deputy Joanna Slade, Blackwell County Sheriff's Department. I saw what happened in the diner. I have been building a case against the Prescotts for 18 months. I need help from someone they cannot control. Meet me at the old gas station on Route 7. Tonight. 9 p.m. Come alone. A second text. And bring the dog. I like dogs. Silas looked at Ranger. Ranger looked back. That old look. The look from 100 missions. The look that said your call, boss, but I already know what you are going to choose. Yeah, Silas murmured. Me too. He got in his truck, started the engine, pulled out of Nell's parking lot. Behind him the diner went on. Coffee poured, eggs scrambled, 12 people ate their breakfast and pretended the world was normal. But it was not. Something had cracked open in that diner. Not the prosthetic, something bigger, something that had been sealed shut in Blackwell for 20 years. The silence. For the first time in 2 decades, someone had walked into the silence and said 2 words that broke it open. That is enough. And somewhere in a glass office above Blackwell, Harlan Prescott picked up his phone. His son's voice on the other end, agitated, angry, describing a stranger with a dog and a camera who had walked into a situation that should have been simple. Find out who he is, Harlan said. His voice was calm. The calm of a man who had crushed 100 problems and slept like a baby after everyone. Find out everything. And then make him understand how things work in this county. He hung up. And he smiled. Because in 20 years nobody had ever refused to learn that lesson. He did not know it yet, but he had just encountered the first man who had refused to learn. And the last man he should have provoked. The old gas station on Route 7 had been closed for 11 years. Concrete cracking, pumps rusted, the kind of place that time had forgotten. And that suited Silas fine, because forgotten places are the best places to plan things that nobody's supposed to see coming. He pulled in at 8:47. 13 minutes early. Old habit. You always arrive first. You always choose your ground. Ranger jumped from the truck bed, hit the gravel without a sound, moved to Silas's left side. Scanning. Always scanning. At 8:56 headlights. A sedan. Civilian. But the way it approached lights off until the last turn, then parked facing outward for fast exit, that was not civilian driving. That was training. A woman stepped out. Young, 29 maybe. Brown hair pulled back tight, jeans and a jacket. But her posture was law enforcement. Everything about her was law enforcement. The way she checked the perimeter before moving. The way her hands stayed near her hip even though she was not wearing a sidearm. Deputy Slade? Mr. Drummond? She walked toward him, stopped when Ranger shifted. He okay with strangers? Depends on the stranger. Joanna crouched down, extended her hand, palm up, the right way. The way you approach a dog you respect. Ranger sniffed, assessed. His tail moved once. He likes you, Silas said. I told you I like dogs. She stood. We do not have much time. Ritter monitors my patrol GPS. I rerouted through a fake traffic stop, but I have maybe 40 minutes before the system flags it. Then talk fast. Joanna pulled out her phone, opened a file. 18 months ago, I transferred to Blackwell from Tulsa PD. First week, Sheriff Ritter took me aside, told me how things work, said the Prescotts are the backbone of this county. Said my job was to keep the peace, which meant keeping the Prescotts happy. And you played along. I played along with my mouth and started building a case with my hands. She scrolled through the phone. Financial records, property transfers that do not add up. Insurance claims on properties that burned within 60 days of the owner refusing to sell. Communication logs between Ritter and Harlan Prescott. Personal phone. Encrypted, but Ritter is not as smart as he thinks. He leaves his office unlocked during lunch. How much do you have? Enough to end Ritter. Maybe enough to get Harlan Prescott indicted. She hesitated. But not enough to guarantee conviction. Prescott's lawyers are the best money can buy. If I go to the state AG with what I have now, they will poke holes. Chain of custody issues. Methods a defense attorney would call a legal search. So you need more. I need irrefutable evidence. Financial records from Prescott Petroleum's internal servers. Communications between Harlan and whoever is above him. Above him, Harlan Prescott does not operate alone. The money flows through his company, but the protection comes from somewhere else. State level. Joanna met his eyes. The eyes of a woman who had spent 18 months pretending to be something she was not, and it had cost her more than she would ever say. 6 months ago, I traced payments from Prescott Petroleum to a political action committee called Oklahoma Future Fund. The PAC is registered to a shell company in Delaware. I could not trace beyond that. But the amounts match the timeline of every land seizure in this county for 8 years. Someone in state government is taking payments to protect Prescott's operation. Someone powerful, someone who can shut down investigations before they start. 3 years ago, the state AG received a complaint from the Taylor family, the ones whose barn burned. The AG opened a preliminary inquiry. 2 weeks later closed. No explanation, no follow-up, just gone. Who closed it? That is what I cannot find out. The order came from inside the AG's office, but it was buried. Whoever did it knew exactly how to make an investigation disappear. Silas processed. The same tactical machinery spinning. Variables, angles, gaps. What do you need from me? Someone outside the system. Someone Prescott cannot fire, cannot transfer, cannot threaten with a pension. Someone who can push hard enough to make them react. Because when they react, they make mistakes. And mistakes are evidence. You want me to be bait, I want you to be a catalyst. There is a difference. Not to the bait, Joanna almost smiled. Fair point. What about Grace Prescott gave her 30 days? 30 days before they filed a competency motion. I have seen the paperwork. They already have a psychiatrist lined up, Dr. Eldon Grant Prescott's personal physician. He will testify that Grace is mentally unfit, PTSD, social isolation, living alone, no family support. Her jaw tightened. It is airtight on paper. A judge who owes Prescott a favor signs off. Grace loses her land. And it all looks perfectly legal. When is the hearing? 26 days. Then we have 26 days to blow this open. Joanna nodded. Quick, sharp. The nod of a woman who had been waiting 18 months for someone to say those words. We. I called my team. 2 men. Surveillance specialists. Former military. They will be here by morning. Silas paused. And I want to bring in a journalist. Joanna's face changed. That is risky. If Prescott finds out media is sniffing around, Prescott has been operating in darkness for 20 years. The only thing that kills an operation like this is light. Silas looked at her. Who broke the story on the Taylor barn fire? Nobody. The local paper is owned by, let me guess. Close. The editor's wife works for Prescott Petroleum. See, every door in this county opens back to the same room. Then we go around the doors. Silas pulled out his phone. I know a journalist. Independent, fearless. Already been burned once for going after powerful people. Can you trust her? She lost her career, her marriage, and her reputation trying to expose a corrupt sheriff in Montana. She did not stop. Silas dialed. The call connected on the second ring. Phoebe Wren. It is Drummond. Twice in 2 months. I am flattered. I need you. We're at Blackwell, Oklahoma. Oil company running a 20-year land seizure operation. Corrupt sheriff. State-level protection. A disabled Marine beaten in a diner for refusing to sell her land. Silence. How disabled? Lost her leg in Iraq. They kicked her prosthetic in a breakfast diner and told her to crawl. I will be there in 12 hours. Phoebe. 12 hours, Silas. Have coffee waiting. She hung up. Joanna looked at him with something that might have been hope. The kind that he had been stomped on too many times to fully bloom but could not be killed either. Who are you, Silas Drummond? Nobody special. People who are nobody special do not have journalists on speed dial and military teams that mobilize overnight. I am a man with a dog who walked into a diner at the wrong time. He paused. Or the right time. Depends on how this ends. Joanna checked her watch. I need to get back. Ritter's shift changes in 20 minutes. One more thing. What the diner this morning? You said you saw what happened. I was parked across the street. Routine patrol. You saw 3 men beat a disabled veteran and you did not go in. Joanna flinched. The question hit exactly where Silas meant it to. I could not. If I had intervened, Ritter would have pulled me from patrol, transferred me out. 18 months of evidence gone. Her voice tightened. You think I wanted to sit in that car? You think I did not want to walk in there and put Wade Prescott on the floor? I think you made a calculation. I made the same calculation every decent cop in a broken system makes. The long game versus the right thing. Her eyes were bright, angry at herself as much as anyone. And I am telling you that watching that woman get kicked while I sat in a cruiser was the worst moment of my 18 months here. Then help me make it the last moment like that. 26 days. 26 days. She got in her car, killed the lights, disappeared into the Oklahoma dark the way she had come. Quiet, careful. A woman fighting a war nobody knew about. Silas stood in the empty lot, Ranger beside him, stars above. The kind of sky you only get in places where the money has not built enough lights to drown it out. What do you think, boy? Ranger looked at him. That look? Yeah. Same here. He drove to Grace's trailer. The word was still there. Red paint on faded aluminum, visible from everywhere. Grace was on the porch, wheelchair this time. The prosthetic lay in her lap. The crack socket useless until she could get to the VA clinic in Oklahoma City. A 3-hour drive she could not make without tires. You came back, Grace said. Told you I would. People say a lot of things. Silas sat on the porch step. Ranger went to Grace, immediately put his head in her lap right next to the broken prosthetic. Grace's hand found the dog's head and started scratching behind his ears without thinking, the way you breathe without thinking, because some things the body knows before the mind catches up. He does not do that with everyone, Silas said. Do but go to someone like that. He is trained to maintain distance. Assess before approach. Silas watched Ranger lean into Grace's touch. He went straight to you, like he already knew you. Dogs know things we do not. Yeah, they do. They sat in the dark. 2 veterans on a porch, one with a broken leg, one with a broken squad, a German shepherd between them connecting what words could not. I met someone tonight, Silas said. A deputy, Joanna Slade. Grace's hand paused on Ranger's head. I know Joanna. She comes to the diner sometimes, orders pie, does not talk much. She has been building a case against the Prescotts for 18 months. Financial records, communications, land theft documentation. She told you all that she needs outside help. Someone Prescott cannot control. And that is you. That is us. Silas looked at Grace. I am not doing this for you, Grace. I am doing this with you. Your land, your fight, your voice. I am just the one who makes sure they cannot drown it out. Grace was quiet. Her hand moved on Ranger's head, the rhythm of trust being built one stroke at a time. I spent 11 years avoiding fights. Came home from Walter Reed, strapped on the prosthetic, rolled into this trailer, and decided I was done. Done with conflict, done with confrontation, done with everything that cost me my leg and my friends and the part of my brain that used to sleep through the night. I know that feeling. I know you do. I can see it. Grace looked at him. You carry the same weight I do. Different names, different faces. Same weight, 6 names. 6 faces! Mine was Dawson. Staff Sergeant Ray Dawson. Best man I ever served with. Took the blast that was meant for me. Grace's voice went rough, like gravel dragged across stone. They gave him a silver star and a funeral. They gave me a prosthetic and a disability check. I've been trying to figure out the math on that for 11 years. It does not add up. It never adds up. No, it does not. Grace straightened in her wheelchair. But here is what I figured out sitting on this porch night after night staring at the dirt my father worked. Dawson did not die so I could sit here and get kicked by rich boys. He did not take that blast so I could hide in a trailer and wait for the Prescotts to erase me. Her eyes hardened. The eyes of a Marine who had remembered something she had spent 11 years trying to forget. Not the pain, the purpose. If I am alive and he's not there, has to be a reason. And maybe that reason is this. This fight, this land. This moment where I stop retreating and start standing. On one leg, on no legs, on my hands and knees if I have to. Grace's jaw set like a bolt driven home. I am done crawling. You understand me, Wade. Prescott told me to crawl in that diner and I did not. And I'm not going to start now. Silas extended his hand. For the second time that day. Grace shook it, harder this time. The grip of a woman who had made a decision she could not unmake and did not want to. We have 26 days, Silas said. After that they file for competency and try to take your land through the courts. We need to blow this open before then. How my team arrives tomorrow. Surveillance. Cameras, sensors, encrypted communications. We map Prescott's operation. Every communication. Every financial movement. Every weak point. And then we break it. Just like that. Nothing is just like that. It is going to be messy. Dangerous. Prescott will push back hard. Silas paused. They might come after you again. Let them come. Grace, I said let them come. Grace wheeled her chair to the edge of the porch and looked out at the Oklahoma flatland, at the 40 acres her father had left her, at the dirt that held enough oil to make Harlan Prescott a billionaire and held enough meaning to make Grace Harmon refuse every dollar offered. This land is mine. My father worked it for 40 years. He is buried here. His father is buried here. I came home from a war zone, and this dirt was the only thing that made sense. The only thing that felt like something worth surviving for. I understand. Do you... Silas looked at Ranger. At the dog who had been with him through the blast, the hospitals, the silence, the 2 years of running from everything except the thing you cannot run from, which is yourself. I did not. Not until this morning when I walked into that diner and saw you on the floor." He paused. "I've been looking for a reason to stop running. You gave me one. A busted-up Marine on the floor of a breakfast joint. Hell of a reason. Best one I have found." A sound cut through the night. Engine, heavy diesel, coming fast on the road. Ranger's head snapped up, ears pinned forward. The growl started low in his chest before the headlights appeared around the bend, and it built not in volume but in intensity the way a turbine builds gathering power. "Get inside," Silas said. "I am not going inside my own Grace. Get inside." 2 trucks, no plates, high beams blazing white against the trailer wall against the red paint against the word. They skidded to a stop at the end of Grace's dirt drive. Doors opened, figures in the dark, 4, 5, 6 men. Not Wade, not Trent or Nolan. These were different, bigger, older, work boots and coveralls. The kind of men who did things for the Prescotts that Wade's soft hands could not handle. A voice from the lead truck. Gravel and menace. Grace Harmon. Who was asking? Grace had not moved. Wheelchair on the porch. "Hands on the armrests. A friend of your landlord." "I do not have a landlord. I own this land. Not for long." The man stepped into the edge of the porch light. Thick, bearded, a face that had done this before and would do it again because the paycheck was good and the conscience was small. "Mr. Prescott sent us to make a final appeal. In person. He already sent his son this morning. The appeal was denied. This is a different kind of appeal." 2 of the men moved toward the porch steps. Ranger was between them and Grace before their boots touched the first board. Teeth bared. That sound. That deep military-trained sound that said one more step is the last step you take standing. Both men stopped. "Call off the dog. He is not mine to call off." Silas stepped out of the shadows beside the porch. Phone in hand, red light recording. "And you are trespassing on private property. I have your faces on camera, your truck's the timestamp, and a direct line to the FBI field office in Oklahoma City. FBI. The bearded man laughed. "You think the FBI cares about a property dispute in Blackwell? I think the FBI cares about organized intimidation, arson fraud, and the attempted forced removal of a disabled veteran from her legally owned land." Silas held the phone steady. "But let us find out. I will send this video tonight and we will see who calls back first." The laughter died. "Who the hell are you, the man who stopped your boss's son from kicking a Marine this morning? And the man who's going to stop you tonight?" Silas did not raise his voice. Did not need to. "So here are your options. You walk back to your trucks, drive away, and tell Harlan Prescott that Grace Harmon said no again. Or you take one more step toward that porch and find out what happens when a military canine with 3 years of combat experience decides you are a threat. We are not afraid of a dog." Ranger lunged. Not at the men, at the space between them. A controlled, precise burst of movement that covered 6 feet in half a second and stopped on a dime. Jaws snapping shut with a crack that echoed off the trailer walls like a gunshot. Both men stumbled backward. One fell, the other tripped on the porch step and scrambled into the dirt on his back. Ranger returned to position. Sat. Calm. Like nothing had happened. Like he had not just demonstrated exactly how fast 90 pounds of trained predator could close a distance that most people thought was safe and was not. The bearded man stared. His face had gone the color of old paper. "Last chance," Silas said. "I will not give him a recall command next time." Silence. 6 men, 1 dog. The math was simple. "This is not over," the bearded man said. "It never is with people like you. But tonight it is." Silas lifted the phone. "Walk." They walked, got in their trucks. Engines roared. Gravel sprayed. Taillights disappeared down the road like red eyes closing. Grace let out a breath she had been holding for 3 minutes. "You are going to get yourself killed. Not tonight. They will come back, more of them. With more than work boots. I know." Silas put the phone away. "That is why tomorrow changes everything." "What happens tomorrow?" "My team arrives. Finch sets up surveillance. Cameras, motion sensors, communication intercepts. Every approach to your property covered. Every move the Prescotts make documented. And Joanna keeps doing what she has been doing. Building the case from the inside. But now she is not alone." Silas sat on the porch step. Ranger settled beside him. The 2 of them facing the road like sentinels. 20 years this county has been in the dark. Tomorrow we start turning on the lights. Grace rolled her wheelchair beside Silas. The 2 of them on the porch. The night enormous around them. The silence of a county that had been afraid for too long. "I lied to you this morning," Grace said. "About what?" "When I said I have been worse. I have not." Her voice was thin, stripped of everything except the truth. This morning was the worst. Not the beating, not the leg. The worst part was looking at those 12 faces and seeing nothing. Not hate, not fear, nothing. Just people eating eggs while a woman got kicked on the floor 3 feet away from them. The silence. The silence. That is what Prescott really owns. Not the land, not the oil. The silence. He bought it, paid for it, maintained it for 20 years, and it's worth more than everything else combined, because it means he can do anything and nobody will ever say a word. Someone said a word today. Earl did. Earl did. Grace almost smiled. 72 years old, shaking so bad he could not hold his coffee. And he stood up. So did you. On the floor with a cracked prosthetic, you looked Wade Prescott in the eye and said, "Get out." Fat lot of good it did. It did more than you know. Silas turned to face her. You want to know why I stopped? Why I walked in? It was not the beating. I have seen beatings. It was not the prosthetic. I have seen prosthetics. He paused. It was your voice. You were on the floor, 3 men standing over you, your leg broken, your crutch gone, and you said you done. Like it was Tuesday morning and someone had spilled your coffee. It was Tuesday morning. Exactly. That is what got me. Not anger, not fear, just a woman who had been through so much that 3 punks in a diner were not even in the top 10 worst things that had happened to her. Silas shook his head. That kind of strength does not come from muscles. It comes from a place that most people never find. And the 3 men standing over you did not have an ounce of it. Grace was quiet for a long time. Ranger's breathing the only sound. Dawson would have liked you, Grace said finally. You would have liked my squad. Maybe they are watching. Both of them. Dawson and your guys. Maybe that is why you walked into that diner at exactly the right moment. Providence. I did not believe in it. Not for 11 years. Silas reached down and touched Ranger's scars. The white lines across the muzzle where shrapnel had rewritten the dog's face the same way war rewrites everything it touches. But a man walks into a diner he has never been to in a town he does not know, and finds a Marine on the floor who carries the same ghosts he does. That is a lot of coincidence. Or none at all. Or none at all. They sat with that. The Oklahoma sky enormous above them, stars so thick they looked painted by someone who could not stop. Get some sleep, Silas said. I will stay on the porch. You do not have to. I want to. Ranger and I have slept on worse porches. He stretched his legs out. Ranger adjusted, lay across the top of the steps, head facing the road, guardian position. The position he had held outside 1,000 tents and 1,000 doorways and 1,000 places where the night was not safe. Besides, Silas said, if they come back, I want to be the first thing they see. And the last that, too. Grace wheeled herself inside. Paused at the door. Silas. Yeah. That word on my trailer. The red paint. What about it? Leave it. Why? Because I want to look at it every morning. I want to remember what they think I am. Grace's jaw set. And when this is over, when they are in handcuffs and their empire is dust, I want to paint over it myself, with my own hands, on my own land. What will you paint? Grace thought about it. The quiet kind of thinking that happens when someone is choosing the words that will define what comes next. My name. Just my name. Harmon. The way my father painted it on the mailbox 50 years ago. Her voice cracked. Held. That is all I want. My name on my land, where nobody can take it. Nobody will. Promise. Promise. Grace went inside. The screen door closed behind her. Silas sat on the porch. Ranger at his feet. The Oklahoma night around them like a cathedral with no ceiling. His phone buzzed. Booker, 12 hours out. Finch has the full kit. Cameras, sensors, encrypted comms, satellite uplink. Good. We will need all of it. How is the Marine tougher than she looks? And she looks plenty tough. And the deputy had 18 months of evidence, solid but not airtight. She needs us to force Prescott into the open. Classic trigger and trap, make them panic, document the response, build the case from their own mistakes. Exactly. Who is the journalist, Phoebe Wren? Booker whistled. The Montana woman. The one who broke the Ridgecrest story. The same, she is good, she's the best, and she hates corrupt power the way some people hate snakes. On a molecular level. When does she arrive tomorrow? Same as you. So by tomorrow night we have surveillance intel media, and a very angry German shepherd, and a Marine who refuses to crawl. Then Prescott does not know what is coming. No, he does not. Booker paused. Silas. Yeah. You sound different. Different how like you are awake. For the first time in 2 years. Like somebody flipped a switch. Silas looked at the word glowing red on the trailer wall. At the land stretching out in every direction. At the dog who had followed him through hell and was still here. Still watching. Still ready. Somebody did, Silas said. A 58-year-old woman with one leg who told 3 thugs to get out of her diner. Hell of a switch. Hell of a woman. The line went dead. Silas leaned back against the porch post and closed his eyes. For the first time in months, the faces that waited behind his eyelids were not screaming. They were watching. Calm. 6 men in desert camouflage standing in a row looking at him the way soldiers look at one of their own who has finally found his mission. Rest easy, he thought. I found it. Ranger pressed his head against Silas's knee. That old gesture! The one from 1,000 Nights in 1,000 Dangerous Places. I know, boy. Silas scratched behind his ear. I know. And somewhere in the biggest house in Blackwell, Harlan Prescott sat at his desk reading a file. Silas Drummond, Staff Sergeant, 3rd Ranger Battalion, 3 combat tours, Distinguished Service Cross, medical discharge, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, loss of entire squad. Harlan read it twice, then picked up the phone. Wade? Yeah, Dad. This man Drummond. He is not a drifter. He is nobody, Dad. Some burnout with a... He is a decorated combat veteran with special operations training and a military working dog. He has a Distinguished Service Cross, Wade. Do you know what that means? Silence. It means he did something so dangerous and so brave that the United States Army gave him the 2nd highest honor they have. It means he is not someone you push around in a diner. Harlan's voice tightened. The way a wire tightens before it snaps, it means we have a problem. I can handle it, you cannot handle anything. You proved that this morning. You had one job, pressure a woman with one leg, and you could not even do that without a stranger walking in and turning it into a spectacle. Dad. Shut up and listen, I am calling Blackridge. Wade's voice changed. Fear where arrogance had been. The boy showing through the bully. Blackridge, Dad, that is, you said Blackridge was last resort. We are at last resort. A combat veteran with a camera just walked into our county. A deputy I do not control is building a case I did not know about. And a Marine who should have broken 6 months ago is still saying no. Harlan stared at Silas's military photo on the screen. Blackridge handles problems we cannot handle ourselves. That is what I pay them for. Who runs Blackridge? Someone who makes problems disappear permanently. Harlan hung up, dialed a new number, encrypted, out of state. It rang 3 times. Blackridge Solutions. It is Prescott. Blackwell, I need a full operation. Target a veteran named Drummond, a Marine named Harmon, and anyone standing with them. Harlan Prescott's voice was cold, absolute. The voice of a man who had crushed 100 obstacles and would crush 100 more. 26 days. I want this resolved. Budget whatever it takes. Understood. Team deploys in 48 hours. The line went dead. And in the dark of a Blackwell night on the porch of a trailer marked with hate, a man and his dog stood guard over a Marine who refused to crawl. They did not know what was coming. But it was coming. And it was worse than anything Wade Prescott and his boot could deliver. Booker and Finch rolled into Blackwell at 6:14 the next morning. Silas met them at the gas station on Route 7. Same spot, same gravel, same ghosts. Booker stepped out looking like he had driven through the night because he had. 16 hours from Boise, with 1 stop for gas and 0 stops for sleep. He was 42, built like a man who had carried heavy things for a living and never put them down, dark skin, shaved head. The kind of face that was calm, the way bedrock is calm because everything unstable had been worn away years ago. Finch emerged from the passenger side, already on his laptop. Satellite images of Grace's property loading on screen before his boots touched gravel. He was 38, lean, pale, the kind of man who lived inside systems and screens, and understood electricity the way fishermen understand water. By feel. 40 acres, Finch said without looking up. 1 access road from the north. Dirt track from the east. Open field south and west. Nearest neighbor is you, quarter-mile northwest. He turned the screen. Defensively, it is a nightmare. No cover, no choke points, flat terrain in every direction. We are not defending, we are documenting. Same problem. If they approach from the south, cameras need line of sight across 300 yards of open ground. Finch closed the laptop. I brought 32 devices, hardwired and wireless, satellite uplink with redundant backup. If someone cuts one feed 29, others keep rolling. How long to install? 6 hours for full coverage. Faster if someone helps who knows where to put things. People do not want found. Booker cracked his neck. The sound of vertebrae realigning after 16 hours in a truck seat. That would be me. They drove to Grace's trailer. The old Marine was on the porch. Same wheelchair, same position. But the coffee in her hand was fresh and her eyes were sharper than yesterday. Something had changed in them overnight. Not softer, not harder, clearer, like someone who had been staring at fog for 11 years had finally seen it burn off. She watched the 2 men unload equipment from the SUV. Professional gear. Military grade. Cases with latches that locked and labels that did not say what was inside. Grace, this is Booker and Finch, my team. Booker walked up the porch steps, extended his hand. Sergeant First Class Booker retired. 6 years with this idiot. He nodded at Silas. He's difficult but effective. Grace shook it. Staff Sergeant Grace Harmon retired. United States Marines. 3 tours. She looked at the equipment still coming out of the vehicle. He seems plenty effective to me. Give it time. Booker looked at the word on the trailer wall. His jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck standing out like cables. Who did that Prescott's people? Night before last. We are going to make them regret that. I am counting on it. Finch was already walking the perimeter, marking positions with small flags that he pulled from his pocket, like a magician producing cards, muttering coordinates into a digital recorder, grid references and signal strengths and angles of coverage that only made sense inside a mind that thought in networks. Ranger followed him, not guarding, curious, sniffing each spot Finch marked like he was reviewing the tactical plan and had opinions about placement. "Your dog is quality checking my work," Finch called out. "He outranks you," Silas said. "He outranks everybody." Phoebe Wren arrived at noon. She pulled up in a rental car that had been driven hard across 2 states and looked it. Dust on the fenders, coffee rings on the dashboard, a backseat full of notebooks and recording equipment, and the kind of organized chaos that belongs to someone who chases stories the way other people chase paychecks. She stepped out with a messenger bag, a laptop, and the kind of energy that fills a room before the person is fully in it. 35. Sharp features, red hair cut short, eyes that moved like a camera, constantly framing, constantly recording even when the equipment was off. "Phoebe Wren," she said to Grace, "I am the one who's going to tell your story. I did not ask for my story to be told. That is exactly why it needs to be." Phoebe crouched in front of the wheelchair, eye level, respectful. "I know what it feels like to have powerful people try to erase you. 3 years ago, a corrupt sheriff in Montana destroyed my career because I would not stop asking questions. I lost my job, my marriage, my reputation." Her eyes held Grace's. "I did not stop asking questions. Why not? Because the families he destroyed could not ask for themselves. They needed a voice." She paused. "You need a voice, Grace. Not because you are weak, because the system that is supposed to protect you is the system that is hurting you, and systems like that only die in sunlight." Grace studied her the way she had studied Silas, looking for the architecture underneath the words, whether it would hold weight. "You are angry," Grace said. "Damn right I am angry. You should be too. I have been angry for 11 years. It is exhausting. Then let me be angry for you, for a little while." Phoebe stood. "All I need is the truth. Every detail, every name, every moment. And I will make sure the world hears it." The last person who tried to expose the Prescotts lost her newspaper. Editor named Wilson. Wrote 3 articles. The 4th never ran. She was out of a job in a week. "I do not have a newspaper. I do not have an editor. I have a laptop and an internet connection and 3 million people who followed the Ridgecrest story." Phoebe smiled. "The Prescotts cannot fire me. They cannot buy my platform. And they cannot stop what I publish because by the time they see it, it's already everywhere." By 6 that evening, Finch's cameras were operational. 32 devices covering every inch of Grace's 40 acres. Motion sensors on every approach road, audio monitors, night vision, satellite uplink streaming encrypted feeds to secure servers in 3 states. "If a coyote crosses that field, I will know its shoe size," Finch said. Joanna came by at 7. Off duty, civilian clothes. She looked different without the uniform. Younger, more tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying 2 identities for 18 months and never being able to set either one down. She handed Silas a thumb drive. "Everything I have." 18 months. Financial transfers, communication logs, property records, insurance fraud documentation, 214 files. Finch plugged it in, started reading. His face changed within minutes. "This is significant," he said. "The money trail from Prescott Petroleum goes through 4 shell companies before reaching Oklahoma Future Fund." He pulled up a diagram. "But the routing uses the same financial architecture I have seen in federal corruption cases. Layered LLCs, offshore intermediaries. This is not a local operation. Someone built this system who understands how to hide money at a federal level." "The state connection," Silas said. "More than state. Some of these transfers route through accounts in Delaware and Nevada. That is federal jurisdiction. If we can identify who controls Oklahoma Future Fund, we have the link between Prescott and whoever is protecting him. Can you trace it?" "Give me 48 hours." Finch was already deep in the data. "Joanna's files give me the entry point. I just need to follow the money upstream." "We do not have 48 hours to sit still," Silas said. "Prescott is going to move. He has already called in outside help." "How do you know?" Joanna asked. "Because that is what cornered animals do. They escalate." Silas looked at the group gathered on Grace's porch. Grace in her chair. Booker checking perimeter cameras on a tablet. Phoebe setting up broadcast equipment on a folding table. Finch buried in financial data. Joanna standing between her badge and her conscience. Ranger lying at Grace's feet. And Prescott is not cornered yet. He just does not know it. The first Blackridge Solutions team arrived in Blackwell on day 3. Finch spotted them on the motel camera he had placed near Main Street the night before. 2 SUVs, tinted windows, Texas plates. They checked in at 11 in the morning, 4 men, clean-cut, professional. The kind of men who wore suits to meetings and something else entirely when the meetings were over. Private Security Finch said, showing Silas the surveillance feed. High-end. Former military or law enforcement. Look at how they swept the parking lot before entering. Perimeter check. Tactical. They are not here for the scenery. Can you ID them already running plates and facial recognition through public databases? Lead vehicle is registered to a company called Sovereign Risk Solutions, subsidiary of Blackridge Solutions Group, based in Houston. Blackridge. That is the name Harlan used. Silas called Joanna. She confirmed. Blackridge Solutions. Harlan has used them before, twice that I know of. Both times the target experienced a sudden change of circumstances. Her voice was tight. The first was a car accident, the second was a house fire, both ruled accidental. And both happened after Blackridge's people showed up. Within a week. Silas felt the anger rise. Hot, familiar. They are going to try something. Car accident, fire, medical emergency. Something that looks natural and legal. Or the competency hearing. If Blackridge's people can manufacture enough evidence of mental instability, they are not getting near Grace. Silas. These are not Wade's thugs. These are professionals. They know how to create situations that are legally defensible. Frame a breakdown. Manufacture a crisis. Get a target hospitalized or committed. And then the courts do the rest. Then we document everything. Every move they make, every person they contact, every step they take toward Grace's property, and when they move, we move first. Day 5, the Blackridge team began surveillance of their own. Finch caught them on 3 separate cameras, photographing Grace's trailer from the road, cataloging her routine, timing her movements, noting when Silas was present and when he was not, building a profile. They are constructing a pattern analysis, Finch said. Looking for windows. Moments when Grace is alone and vulnerable. She is never alone. They do not know that. They can see you and Ranger. They cannot see the cameras. They do not know we are watching them watch her. Good. Let them think they have the advantage. Day 7. Wade Prescott walked into Nell's diner at 7:08. Same time Grace usually arrived. But Grace was not there. Silas had convinced her to change her routine. Different times, different routes, never predictable. Wade sat in Grace's booth. Ordered Grace's coffee. Waited. Nell poured it without speaking. Her hands did not shake. But her eyes burned with something that had been building for 20 years and was very close to the surface. Morning, Nell. Wade. Where is your favorite customer home? That is too bad. I was hoping to continue our conversation. There is no conversation to continue. She said no. People change their minds. Not that woman. Nell set the pot down. The sound of it hitting the counter was louder than it should have been. And not in this diner. Not anymore. Wade looked at her, that cold flash behind the smile. Careful, Nell. This place has been here a long time. Be a shame if something happened to it. Are you threatening my diner? I am making an observation. Old building, wood frame, outdated wiring. He sipped his coffee. Slowly. Things happen. Get out. Excuse me, I said get out of my diner, right now. Wade laughed. You are kicking me out. My father, I know who your father is. I have known him longer than you have been alive. And I am telling you his son is not welcome in my establishment. Nell's voice filled the diner. Every corner, every booth. You kicked a woman on my floor. A Marine, a veteran, you kicked her prosthetic leg and told her to crawl. In my diner. Where my husband's picture hangs on that wall. She pointed. The photograph. A young man in desert camouflage. Desert storm. Smiling the way young soldiers smile before they learn what war costs. My husband carried that war in his chest for 35 years until it killed him. And you walk in here and kick a woman who carries the same thing in front of his picture. Nell's eyes were wet, but her voice was ironed. Get out. The diner was silent. 12 people. The same 12. But something had shifted. A woman at the counter put down her fork. A trucker straightened in his booth. An elderly couple looked at each other and nodded. Wade stood. His smile was gone. You are going to regret this, Nell. I have regretted a lot of things in 62 years. Standing up for a Marine will not be one of them. Wade left. The door slammed. And for the first time in 20 years, someone in Blackwell applauded. 1 person. Then 2. Then the whole diner. 12 people clapping for a 62-year-old woman who had done what they had not done 7 days ago. Nell stood behind her counter and cried. Not from fear. From the relief of finally saying the thing she had wanted to say since the morning she put that phone down and hated herself for it. Day 12. Finch cracked the Oklahoma Future Fund. Got it. He called everyone to the trailer. Oklahoma Future Fund is controlled by a trust registered in Delaware. The trust beneficiary is listed as a private holding company called Harlan Legacy Partners. Harlan Legacy Partners has one director. He turned the screen. State Senator Dwight Aldrich. The name hung in the air. Aldrich Joanna breathed. Chairman of the Oklahoma State Energy Commission. The commission that approves pipeline permits, Grace said. Finch pulled up the financial chain. The money flows from Prescott Petroleum through 4 shell companies into Oklahoma Future Fund, which routes payments to Heartland Legacy, which deposits into accounts controlled by Aldrich's trust. Over 15 years, $23 million. $23 million, Phoebe repeated, in exchange for pipeline approvals, environmental waivers, investigation shutdowns. Finch highlighted a series of transactions. Remember the Taylor barn fire? The state AG opened an inquiry, 2 weeks later closed. I found the order. It was issued by the AG's chief of staff, Rebecca Dunn. Guess who Rebecca Dunn's husband works for? Aldrich's office, Joanna said. His campaign specifically. Deputy Finance Director? Finch leaned back. It is the same pattern every time. Local enforcement does the dirty work. State-level protection makes sure nobody investigates. Money flows in circles that only a forensic accountant with no life and a lot of coffee would ever catch. This is it, Phoebe said. The Prescott-Aldrich connection. Once this goes public. Not yet, everyone looked at Silas. We publish now? Prescott's lawyers tie it up in court for years. Aldrich claims ignorance. The shell companies dissolve. Evidence gets buried. Silas stood. We need them to act. On camera. In real time. You want to set a trap, Booker said. I want to set a spotlight. Same thing. Different name. Silas looked at Grace. Are you ready for what? To go back to Nell's? To sit in your booth? To let the whole world watch what happens when you say no for the 4th time? Grace's hand gripped the armrest of her wheelchair. You want me to be bait. I want you to be exactly who you are. A Marine who refuses to crawl, in front of every camera in the country. We stream it live. Phoebe publishes simultaneously. Finch feeds the financial evidence to the FBI. Joanna provides the law enforcement documentation. And when Prescott or his Blackridge people make their move, the world sees it. Grace looked at the word on her trailer wall. When day 15, 3 days from now. The night before day 15, Finch discovered something. He had been running a deep scan on the Blackridge team's communications. Silas. He called him to the screen at 2 in the morning. What Blackridge entered Grace's trailer yesterday afternoon, while she was at this VA clinic, while you were driving her. Silas went very still. How back window, 12-minute entry. Professional. They knew the camera angles, most of them. But they missed number 17, the one I hid inside the ventilation grate. Finch hit play. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. 2 men in gloves, moving through Grace's kitchen with the efficiency of people who had done this before. They opened cabinets, placed items, closed cabinets, moved to the bedroom, placed more items, left through the same window. What did they plant? Prescription bottles. Opioids not prescribed to Grace. 2 empty liquor bottles in the kitchen trash. A journal with entries that appear to describe paranoid delusions. And a folder of printed documents designed to suggest financial incompetence. Bills marked overdue. Fake collection notices. They are manufacturing the incompetency case, Silas said. Every item placed corresponds to a criterion in the Oklahoma Mental Health Commitment Statute. Substance abuse, paranoid ideation, financial mismanagement, self-neglect. If a psychiatrist like Dr. Eldon Grant were to visit Grace's trailer and find these items, he could write a report that would satisfy every legal requirement for an emergency commitment hearing. Grace would be in a facility before she could call a lawyer. The same facility they sent Mrs. Doyle to. Same one. Do we remove the planted items? No. We document them. Photograph everything exactly where they placed it. Chain of custody, timestamps, the camera footage of the plan itself. This is not just evidence of intimidation. This is evidence of a conspiracy to falsely commit a disabled veteran. That is a federal civil rights violation. Exactly what the FBI needs to elevate this from local corruption to federal prosecution. And the psychiatrist, Dr. Grant, we let him come. Let him walk into that trailer and find exactly what Blackridge put there. Let him write his report. And when he files that report with the court, we present the camera footage showing his client's mercenaries planting every item he cites as evidence. The trap springs on them, not on Grace. There was a sound from the doorway. Grace. In her wheelchair. She had heard everything. They were in my home, she said. Her voice was quiet. The dangerous kind of quiet. The kind that comes before storms that flatten towns. While I was at the VA getting my prosthetic fixed so I could walk again after their boss broke it, they were in my home planting evidence to have me locked up. Grace, No, let me say this. She wheeled into the room. I survived Ramadi. I survived an IED that killed the best man I ever knew. I survived 14 months in Walter Reed learning to walk on a piece of metal. I survived 11 years of nightmares and phantom pain in a county that was too afraid to look at me. Her eyes burned. And these people think they can break me with pill bottles and fake journals. She looked at Silas. Day 15. I'll be in that booth at 7:08. Same coffee. Same seat. And when they come, I will look Harlan Prescott in the eye the way I looked at Wade on the floor of that diner. And I will say no. For the 4th time. For the last time. In front of every camera you can put in that room. Are you afraid? She was quiet for a moment. Yes. I've been afraid every day for 11 years. Fear is not the problem. Fear is just the weather. You do not stop planting because it might rain. Dawson was afraid. Every single day. He still walked point. He still cleared rooms. He still showed me his daughter's picture every morning like a prayer. Her voice cracked and held. If that man could be afraid and still walk toward the thing that scared him, I can sit in a booth and drink my coffee. Day 15. 7 in the morning. Nell's diner. Finch had been inside for 2 nights, working between midnight and 4 while Nell kept the back door unlocked. 27 hidden cameras now covered the interior and exterior. Phoebe's pre-published article was loaded and ready. 6,000 words, every dollar traced, every victim named. Booker was positioned in a truck across the street. 2 angles on the front entrance. Joanna was at the sheriff's station, monitoring Ritter's communications. Grace rolled through the front door at 7:08. New wheelchair, not because she needed one. The prosthetic was refitted. She could walk. But she wanted the chair. Wanted them to see what Wade Prescott had done. No prosthetic, no way to hide it. Just a 58-year-old Marine in a wheelchair with silver hair and eyes that would not look away. She rolled to her booth. 3rd from the door, left side, back to the wall. Nell poured her coffee without a word. Earl was already there. Same seat, same coffee, same crossword. Morning, Grace. Morning, Earl. Big day. Every day is a big day when you have one leg and enemies with oil money. Stream goes live in 10 minutes, Finch said through the earpiece. Pre-registration hit 43,000 viewers. At 7:22, Wade Prescott's truck pulled into the parking lot. Not just Wade. Harlan Prescott was in the passenger seat. First time the old man had come to the diner in years. Behind them, a second vehicle. The Blackridge team. 4 men in dark suits, Contact Finch said. Harlan Prescott, Wade Prescott. 4 Blackridge operatives. Stream status live. 67,000 viewers. Let them in. The door opened. Harlan walked in first. 61, silver hair, expensive coat. The face of a man who had built an empire on other people's land and other people's silence, and had never once questioned whether he had the right. Wade behind him, Trent and Nolan flanking. The Blackridge men took positions near the door and counter. Harlan walked straight to Grace's booth. Looked down at the woman in the wheelchair. Grace. Harlan. It has been a while since I came here personally. Must be important. It is. Harlan slid into the booth. I want to have an honest conversation. That would be a first. I deserve that. My son's behavior was unacceptable. I've told him so. What happened in this diner was wrong, and I apologize. Grace said nothing. She had learned long ago that when powerful men apologize, the knife comes next. I am here to make things right. Harlan continued. A new offer. $300,000, triple the market value. Full relocation assistance, medical care covered for life. My medical care is covered by the VA, on account of the leg I left in Iraq. Additional care. Private physicians, the best prosthetics money can buy. Consider it a gesture of respect for your service. Respect! Grace set her coffee down. Your son kicked my prosthetic leg in this diner and told me to crawl. Your people sprayed a word on my home. Your sheriff ignores every complaint filed against your family. Your mercenaries broke into my trailer and planted evidence to have me committed to a psychiatric facility. Harlan's face flickered. She knew about the planted evidence. And you are sitting here talking about respect. I am talking about a new beginning. There is no new beginning, Harlan. There is only the truth. And the truth is, you need my land for a pipeline worth $200 million. And you have spent 20 years destroying anyone who stood between you and what you wanted. Harlan's mask shifted, the warmth cooling degree by degree. That is a serious accusation. It is not an accusation. It is a fact. The Taylors, Mrs. Doyle, the Wilson newspaper, every family in this county who said no and paid for it. Grace leaned forward. You think I do not know? You think we do not all know? Every person in this diner knows exactly what you are, Harlan. They have always known. They were just too afraid to say it, Grace. I am trying to help you. You are trying to buy me. The way you bought Ritter. The way you bought the judge. The way you bought everyone in this county who had a price. Grace's voice filled the diner. Clear, steady. But I do not have a price. My land does not have a price. My father's grave does not have a price. And my dignity, the dignity your son tried to kick out of me on this floor, that sure as hell does not have a price. 112,000 viewers. Harlan's mask dropped completely. What was underneath was the cold machinery of a man who had destroyed lives for profit and never lost sleep. You are making a mistake, Grace. Everybody keeps telling me that. And yet here I am, still sitting in my booth, still drinking my coffee, still saying no. You do not understand what is at stake. I understand exactly what is at stake. You just do not understand that it is my stake, not yours. Grace picked up her coffee, took a sip. The most ordinary gesture in the world, performed with extraordinary calm. Get out of my booth, Harlan. Harlan stood slowly. The Blackridge men shifted. Mr. Prescott, Silas's voice from the back booth. Before you leave, you should know something. Harlan turned. Saw Silas for the first time. Saw the dog under the table. You are Drummond. I am. And right now 120,000 people are watching this conversation on a live stream. Silas stood. Phoebe Wren has published a detailed investigation of your financial relationship with State Senator Dwight Aldrich, including $23 million in payments through Oklahoma Future Fund. Harlan's face went white. Instantly. Like a plug had been pulled. That is FBI Special Agent Diaz has a federal tactical team 27 minutes from this location. Deputy Joanna Slade has provided 18 months of documented evidence. We also have camera footage of your Blackridge operatives entering Grace Harmon's trailer and planting evidence intended to support a fraudulent commitment hearing. Your operatives are on camera. Your son is on camera. You are on camera. 130,000 people in climbing. Wade bolted for the door. Trent and Nolan followed. They made it 3 steps. The Blackridge men did not move. Professionals knew when a situation had inverted. They stood perfectly still, hands visible. Your consultants are smarter than your son, Silas said. They already know this is over. Harlan Prescott stood in the middle of Nell's diner. The diner he had threatened to burn. The diner where his son had kicked a Marine. The diner where 12 people had once sat in silence because his name made the world stop. Those 12 people were watching now, not looking at their plates. The trucker stood up, the woman at the counter stood up, the elderly couple stood up, one by one. Every person in Nell's diner rose from their seats. Not threatening, just standing, bearing witness. 153,000 witnesses online. 12 in the room. It is over, Harlan Nell said. 20 years. It is over. His phone rang. He answered on reflex. Harlan. A voice. Tight, panicked. This is Aldrich. The FBI is at my office. They have warrants, financial records, everything. The senator's voice cracked. Whatever you are doing, stop. It is done. Harlan lowered the phone. His hand was shaking. Dad? Wade's voice from near the door. Small, scared. Dad, what do we do? Harlan did not answer. He looked at Grace Harmon. How, Harlan whispered. You are asking the wrong question, Grace said. The question is not how. The question is why it took so long. Federal vehicles filled the parking lot at 7:49. Sirens, lights, agents in tactical gear. Special Agent Diaz walked through the diner door. Harlan Prescott, you are under arrest for racketeering conspiracy fraud, civil rights violations, and obstruction of justice. Harlan did not resist. The Blackridge men did not resist. Wade tried to run, made it 6 feet. Trent and Nolan surrendered immediately. Sheriff Ritter was arrested at the station. Joanna cuffed him herself. You knew, Ritter said. All this time. All this time. And every day I watched you protect the people who were destroying this county. I built the case that would end you. I was just following. Do not say you were following orders. You had a badge and a gun and an oath, and you sold all 3 for a vehicle and a house. Joanna tightened the cuffs. This county deserved better. Grace Harmon deserved better. Senator Aldrich was arrested in his Oklahoma City office at 8:12. Federal agents put him in handcuffs at his own desk. 270,000 people watched the live stream. Phoebe's article hit every major outlet by noon. The video of Grace in her wheelchair saying, I do not have a price, was viewed 19 million times in 48 hours. The video of Nell telling Wade to get out, 27 million. The video of 12 people standing up in a diner in Blackwell, Oklahoma, 41 million. 2 words. The 2 most expensive words Harlan Prescott had ever heard. Get out. In the diner after the agents left and the cameras powered down, Grace Harmon sat in her booth. Same seat, same coffee, Earl across from her, Nell behind the counter, Silas in the next booth with Ranger under the table. Nobody spoke for a long time. The silence was different now, not the silence of fear. The silence of people learning to exhale after holding their breath for 20 years. Then Earl raised his coffee cup. To Dawson, he said. And to 6 rangers whose names I do not know. And to every soldier who gave something so the rest of us could sit in a diner and drink bad coffee in a free country. Grace raised her cup. Silas raised his. Nell raised hers from behind the counter. To Dawson, Grace said. To the squad, to every man and woman who wore the uniform and came home different. They drank. And Nell's diner went quiet. The good kind of quiet. The kind that comes after a storm breaks and the sky opens up and the air smells like something clean. The federal courthouse in Oklahoma City was 3 hours from Blackwell. Silas drove Grace in the truck, Ranger in the back seat. He is family, Grace had said. Family rides inside. They did not talk for the first hour. Oklahoma flatlands scrolling past. I could not sleep last night, Grace said. Bad dreams, no dreams. That is the thing. For 11 years, every time I close my eyes, I am back in that Humvee. I smell the dust. I hear Dawson calling for a medic. I feel my leg, the real one, still attached for half a second before my brain remembers it is gone. Last night, nothing. Just dark. Just quiet. That is good. It is terrifying. 11 years of nightmares and then nothing. Like my brain ran out of things to punish me with. She paused. Or like it finally decided I had paid enough. Have you... I do not know. How do you calculate the debt for surviving when better people did not? Silas did not answer because the question was his too. Dawson had a daughter, Grace said. Isabella, she was 4 when he deployed. She would be 15 now. He showed me her picture every single day. First thing in the morning, like a prayer. It did not keep him alive. No, it did not. Grace touched the window. After Walter Reed, I tried to find her. Dawson's wife had moved to San Antonio, remarried. I wrote 3 letters, never heard back. She stopped writing. Grace, what after today? You should try again, because Dawson's daughter deserves to know what kind of man her father was. And you are the only person left who can tell her. Yeah, Grace said finally. Maybe I will. The courthouse was surrounded. Media trucks, cameras, reporters. Grace rolled through the front entrance in her wheelchair. She had refused the prosthetic today. I want them to see the chair. I want the jury to look at me and see exactly what Wade Prescott saw when he kicked a woman who could not stand up. No prosthetic, no way to hide it, just me. Inside the courtroom was packed. Families from Blackwell, veterans from the VFW post, reporters from every major outlet, Earl Whitfield in the front row, wearing a suit he had last worn to his wife's funeral, sitting ramrod straight. Nell beside him in a blue dress, her husband's bronze star pinned to her collar. The prosecution called Grace first. She wheeled herself to the witness stand, waved off the bailiff, locked the wheels, settled. Miss Harmon, can you describe the events of September 12th at Nell's diner? I was sitting in my booth. Same booth I have sat in every Tuesday for 3 years. Third from the door left side. Coffee and eggs. Across from my friend Earl Whitfield. Her voice was steady. Unhurried. Wade Prescott walked in with 2 associates. He approached my table. Demanded I sign a land transfer document for my property. And what did you say? I said no. What happened next? His associate Trent took my crutch. Threw it across the diner. Without my crutch I cannot stand. Then Wade pulled me out of the booth. I fell, hit the floor, my prosthetic socket cracked against the tile, and then he told me to crawl. She let the word sit. He stood over me and told me to crawl to my crutch, to show the people in the diner how I serve my country. A juror in the second row wiped her eyes. Did you crawl? No, sir, I did not. What did you do? I looked up at him and asked if he was done. And was he? No. He told his associate to hold me down. Then he kicked my prosthetic. Not the metal, the socket. The part that connects to my residual limb. I screamed. In front of 12 people and a child who was crying in a booth. I screamed because a 28-year-old man was standing on my prosthetic leg in a breakfast diner and nobody was stopping him. Nobody intervened. One person, Earl Whitfield, 72 years old, Korean War veteran. He stood up. He was the only one. Out of 12 people. He was the only one who said a word. Why do you think the others did not intervene? Because the Prescott family has spent 20 years teaching this county what happens when you say no. The Taylors lost their barn, Mrs. Doyle lost her home and died in a facility. That is not cowardice, that is survival. When the system that is supposed to protect you is the system hurting you, silence is not a choice. It is a prison. The defense attorney rose. Ms. Harmon, is it not true that you suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder? Yes. Could your PTSD affect your perception of events? My PTSD affects my sleep, my appetite, and my ability to sit in a room without knowing where the exits are. It does not affect my ability to tell the difference between a man kicking me and a man not kicking me. I was on the floor, counselor. A man was standing on my prosthetic leg. Another man was sitting on my chest. Grace reached for her pant leg. PTSD does not make you imagine a boot on your leg when there is not one. But if you would like, I can show you the socket. The crack is still there. The attorney retreated. No further questions. Nell took the stand next. I reached for the phone, she said. And Wade told me to go ahead and call the sheriff, because he knew. Calling the sheriff was the same as calling his father. Did you call Nemo? No. I put the phone down. Nell's voice broke. I put the phone down and I watched a Marine get kicked on my floor and I did nothing. For 3 minutes. The longest 3 minutes of my life. Why are you telling us this now? Because someone has to say it out loud. They did not just steal land and burn barns, they stole our voices. They made us believe that speaking up was more dangerous than staying quiet. And for 20 years they were right, until they were not. What changed? A man walked in. A stranger with a dog. And he said 2 words. That is enough. Nell touched the bronze star on her collar. My husband carried this home from Desert Storm. He never talked about what he did to earn it. But I know what it meant. It meant he saw something wrong and he walked toward it instead of away. And what did you do? 3 days later, Wade came back, threatened to burn my diner, and I told him to get out. The 12 people who had not moved 3 days earlier, they clapped. They stood up and they clapped, not because I was brave, because they had been waiting for someone to prove it was safe to make a sound. Joanna testified for a full day, 18 months of evidence. She described the Taylor barn, Mrs. Doyle's forced commitment, the AG investigation that vanished the Blackridge operations, and the planted evidence in Grace's trailer. Deputy Slade, you built this case while working under a corrupt sheriff. Why did you not come forward sooner? Because coming forward without sufficient evidence would have gotten me transferred and the evidence destroyed. I had to choose between doing something visible and doing something effective. I chose effective. I am not proud of the cost. What was the cost? I sat in a patrol car and watched Grace Harmon get beaten through a diner window, and I did not go in. She looked at Grace. That is the cost, and I will carry it for the rest of my career. Grace met her eyes, nodded once. Silas testified last. Mr. Drummond, you walked into Nell's diner on September 12th. Can you describe what you found? A woman on the floor, a prosthetic leg twisted sideways, a crutch thrown across the room, 3 men standing over her, one of them sitting on her chest, and 12 people sitting in booths pretending it was not happening. What did you do? I said 2 words. That is enough. Why those words? Because they were true. Because a woman in a diner being kicked for saying no is enough. Because 12 people being so afraid they cannot move is enough. Because 20 years of a family running a county like a private kingdom is enough. I did not plan it. I walked in for coffee and found something that could not be walked past. My squad died believing that protecting people mattered more than protecting themselves. If I had walked past Grace Harmon, they died for nothing, and I cannot carry that. The defense stood. Mr. Drummond, you have a Distinguished Service Cross. Can you tell the jury what you received it for? I carried 3 wounded soldiers to an extraction point under enemy fire after our vehicle was disabled. 3 soldiers. Out of how many in your squad? 6. And the other 3 killed in action, including my squad leader, Staff Sergeant Rivera. Mr. Drummond, is it not possible that your intervention in the diner was a psychological projection that you saw in Grace the soldiers you could not save? The courtroom was silent. Counselor Silas said, I am going to answer your question honestly. Yes. When I saw Grace on that floor, I saw my squad, I saw Rivera, I saw every man I could not save. And that is exactly why I stopped. Because the difference between Kandahar and Nell's diner is that in Kandahar I could not do anything. The bomb went off and my friends died and all I could do was carry the ones who were still breathing. But in that diner I could do something. I could say 2 words. I could stop 3 men from hurting a woman who had already given enough. You want to call that projection, call it whatever you want. But Grace Harmon is alive. She is sitting in this courtroom with her dignity intact. Her land is hers. Her name is hers. My squad would be proud of that. And I will not let you turn their sacrifice into a diagnosis. The courtroom erupted. The judge gavelled for order. The defense had no further questions. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Grace sat in the hallway, Silas beside her, Earl on her other side, Nell pacing, Phoebe on her laptop, Joanna standing by the window, badge on. Interim Sheriff of Blackwell County appointed by the governor 48 hours after Ritter's arrest. What if they do not convict? Grace asked. They will convict. The bailiff opened the door. The jury has reached a verdict. On the charge of racketeering and conspiracy, we find the defendant Harlan Prescott guilty. Grace closed her eyes. On the charge of civil rights violations, guilty. On the charge of fraud and obstruction, guilty. Every count, every charge. Wade Prescott, guilty. 12 years. Trent and Nolan, guilty. 8 years each. Sheriff Boyd Ritter, Guilty. 18 years. Blackridge Solutions. Designated criminal enterprise. State Senator Dwight Aldrich. Guilty. 30 years, no parole, families weeping. Reporters scrambling. Earl Whitfield grabbed his cane and stood and saluted. Harlan Prescott stood for sentencing. Mr. Prescott, you used your wealth and influence to terrorize a community for 2 decades. You destroyed families. You corrupted institutions. You turned law enforcement into a weapon against the citizens it was sworn to protect. And when a disabled veteran, a woman who lost her leg serving this country, told you no, you sent your son to kick her on the floor of a diner and tell her to crawl. You sent mercenaries to plant evidence in her home. You tried to have her committed to a psychiatric facility to steal her land. 30 years. Federal. The marshals took his arms. He turned. Found Grace in the gallery. You think you have won, Harmon? I did not win anything, Harlan. I just refused to lose. Grace's voice carried across the courtroom. And that is the part you never understood. You can buy land. You can buy sheriffs and senators and judges. But you cannot buy the thing that kept me on that floor saying no. Because it is not for sale. It was never for sale. And what is that? The knowledge that my father worked that land for 40 years. That Dawson died in that desert so people like me could come home to places like Blackwell. That the flag on your lapel and the flag on my wheelchair mean the same thing. And you disgraced it. Harlan stared at her. The marshals led him away. Wade went next, crying. The boy underneath the bully fully exposed. Ritter walked out in silence. The badge already removed. The courtroom emptied slowly. Families hugging, crying. The kind of tears that come after you have been holding your breath for 20 years. Phoebe found Silas by the elevator. $47 million in seized assets distributed to victim families. The Taylors are getting their farm back. Mrs. Doyle's daughter is suing the guardianship firm. The Blackridge investigation has expanded to Texas and Louisiana. 6 more cases. Same pattern. It is always the same pattern. And it is always the same people who break it. One person who says no. One person who walks in and says enough. What are you going to do now? Silas looked across the hallway. Grace was surrounded by families. The trucker from the diner was there. Pete Garza, crying, apologizing. Grace was holding his hand and telling him it was okay, that everyone was afraid that the only thing that mattered was what you did next. Ranger sat beside the wheelchair, tail wagging. I do not know, Silas said. I have never not had a fight. Maybe it is time to learn. He walked over to Grace. Hell of a day. Hell of a day. Thank you. For what you said on the stand, about your squad, about Rivera. Grace's eyes were wet. You did not have to share that. Yeah. I did. The defense tried to turn my wounds into weapons. I took them back. That is what you taught me, Grace. On the floor of that diner. When Wade told you to crawl and you said get out. You took your wounds back. Ranger moved between them, put his head in Grace's lap. That gesture of recognition. One wounded soldier knowing another. Dogs and veterans, Grace said. We speak the same language. What language is that? The language of people who have seen the worst and still show up every day. Broken and standing. That is all any of us are doing, Silas. Showing up. Broken and standing anyway. Joanna appeared. New badge, sheriff's badge. The governor's office called. Official appointment, Sheriff Joanna Slade. Effective immediately. Do not congratulate me yet. I've got a county to rebuild and about 300 families who need to learn to trust law enforcement again. She looked at Grace. Starting with you. You can start by replacing the window in Ritter's office. That thing has been broken for 6 years. And the second order of business. Arresting anyone who sprays paint on a veteran's home. That will never happen in my county again. They walked out of the courthouse together. Grace in her chair. Silas beside her, Ranger between them, Earl behind, Nell clutching her husband's bronze star, into the Oklahoma sunlight, into the beginning of something that did not have a name yet, but felt like the thing they had all been fighting for. Not victory, not justice, something quieter, something harder to define and harder to destroy. The right to sit in a diner on a Tuesday morning and not be afraid. The drive back to Blackwell took 3 hours. Pull over, Grace said. You okay? Pull over, please. Silas pulled the truck to the shoulder. Grace grabbed her crutch, stepped out. She stood on the edge of the road, her land stretched out before her, 40 acres, flat, unremarkable to anyone who did not know what it meant. Ranger jumped down, walked to Grace, sat beside her. Not pushing, just present. Grace looked at the spot near the cottonwood where her father was buried. No headstone. Just a wooden cross and a Marine flag she had replaced 4 times. Hey, Dad, her voice cracked. We won. She stood there. 1 leg and a crutch and a German shepherd and 40 acres of Oklahoma dirt that a billionaire could not buy because a dead man's daughter would not sell. We won, Dad. They are in prison. The sheriff, the senator, the whole machine. Your land is safe. Your name is safe. Nobody's ever going to come here with papers and threats again. Ranger pressed against her good leg. That steady pressure. I wish you could see it. I wish Dawson could see it. Her voice broke completely. I wish everyone who gave something could see that it mattered. That it was not for nothing. She stood on that roadside for 5 minutes. Silas did not rush her. Some moments are not meant to be shortened. When Grace got back in the truck, her face was different. Clearer. Like someone had wiped a window that had been fogged for 11 years. Okay, let us go home. They pulled up to the trailer at sunset. Grace stopped breathing. The word was gone. The red paint that had burned on the aluminum wall for 3 weeks. Gone. Replaced by something else. A mural, not professional, not perfect. Hand-painted by hands that had never painted a mural. A flag. An eagle. And underneath in letters that were not straight but were absolutely certain. Staff Sergeant Grace Harmon, United States Marines. Welcome home. Nell was on the porch. Paint on her hands. Earl beside her. Paint on his funeral suit. Blue and red streaks on the sleeve. Who did this? Grace whispered. We did. Nell walked down the steps. While you were at the courthouse, Earl and I and about 30 people who decided that the first thing you should see when you came home was not that word. 30 people. The trucker from the diner, Pete Garza. He did the eagle. Could not draw worth a damn, but he tried. The couple from booth 7. The mother who covered her child's eyes. The waitress from the morning shift who quit because she could not handle the guilt. She took Grace's hand. They all came, Grace. Every person who sat in that diner and did not move. They came here today and they painted over the worst word they had ever let happen. Grace stared at the mural. At the flag that was not quite right. At the eagle that looked more like a hawk. At the letters of her name. Her father's name. Covering the place where hatred had been. It is not very good, Earl said. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. The trucker cried the whole time, Earl said. Big man. Tattoos. Said he had been ashamed every day since that morning. Said he could not sleep. Said he kept seeing you on the floor and his hands on his plate and he could not live with it anymore. His name, Grace said. What is his name? Pete. Pete Garza. I want to meet him. He is inside. Making coffee. Badly. Grace rolled up the ramp. New ramp. Someone had built that too. Pete Garza was in the kitchen. 6'2", 250 pounds. Arms covered in tattoos. Standing at the counter trying to figure out a coffee maker like a man defusing a bomb. He turned. Saw Grace. And fell apart. Ms. Harmon, I am sorry. I sat there and I watched and I did not. My father was Army. Desert Storm. He would have if he had seen me sit there while Pete... I could not sleep. Every night I see you on that floor and my hands on my plate and I, Pete. Grace rolled closer. Reached up, put her hand on the big man's arm. It is okay. It is not okay. No, it is not. But you are here now. You painted over the worst thing anyone ever called me. And you are making coffee in my kitchen. Badly from the looks of it. I never learned how. Dawson could not make coffee either. 6 deployments and the man could not work a coffee maker. Let me show you. They made coffee together. A disabled Marine and a trucker who had not stood up. In a kitchen in a trailer on 40 acres of Oklahoma dirt. The most ordinary scene in the world and the most extraordinary. The weeks that followed changed Blackwell the way water changes stone. Slowly. Deeply. Federal investigators continued mapping the Prescott network. Properties were returned, compensation distributed, families who had been driven out came home. The Taylor barn, rebuilt by volunteers, insurance settlement won on appeal. Mrs. Doyle's daughter sued the guardianship firm, won $7.2 million, donated half to the county veterans fund. Phoebe published her series. 6 long-form articles, the Pulitzer Committee called. I do not write for prizes, she told Silas. I write for the families who cannot write for themselves. Joanna transformed the sheriff's department. New deputies, new policies, body cameras mandatory, community oversight board established. Weekly meetings held in Nell's diner. Trust takes time, she told Silas. People do not stop being afraid overnight. How do you build it, one traffic stop at a time? One answered call. One moment where someone sees a badge and does not flinch. Booker and Finch stayed 2 weeks, helped dismantle the surveillance network, trained local volunteers, left a security system at Grace's trailer. You are going to be okay, Brother Booker told Silas on the day he left. I am figuring it out. You have been figuring it out for 2 years. I think you figured it out. You just will not admit it. Admit that you found your mission. The one that does not require a rifle or body armor. The one that just requires showing up. Booker hugged him hard. Stop running, Silas. You are home. The idea started at Nell's. Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the verdict, Grace in her booth, Silas across from her, Ranger under the table, Earl beside them. I have been thinking, Grace said. Dangerous. Shut up and listen. What happened to me? The diner, the beating, the 20 years of Prescott, that is not unique. It happens everywhere, in every state, in every county where power goes unchecked. What if we changed how an organization? Veterans helping veterans, legal aid, documentation, security, the same thing we did here, but systematic, available to anyone being crushed by a system that is supposed to protect them. That is a big idea. Big ideas are the only ones worth having. I want to call it the diner table, because that is where it starts. It always starts at a table, where people sit, where people talk, where someone says no and someone else says that is enough. Every community has a diner. Every diner has a table. And every table can be the place where one person decides that silence is not an option anymore. Nell was already nodding. I will donate the space. Back room. Earl looked up from his crossword. I am 72. What do you need? I need you to do what you did that morning. Stand up. Be the first one. I was terrified. I know. Do it terrified. That is the whole point. 3 months later, the diner table was operational. Nell's back room converted into a command center. Donated computers, volunteer lawyers, a phone line that rang 24 hours a day. The calls came slowly, then faster, then constant. A rancher in Montana whose water rights had been seized. Silas and Ranger drove 12 hours. Rights restored in 60 days. An elderly couple in Mississippi whose home had been condemned by a corrupt building inspector. Phoebe published the story. Inspector fired. Condemnation reversed. A disabled Navy veteran in Arizona being pressured to sell his property. Grace called him personally. Veteran to veteran, wound to wound. The man held his land. 1 year after the trial, a letter arrived at Grace's trailer. San Antonio return address. She stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Silas found her on the porch. The letter in her lap, tears on her face. Grace, it is from Isabella, Dawson's daughter. Her voice was barely there. She is 16 now. Her mother found my letters, 3 of them, unopened, in a box in the garage. She gave them to Isabella last month. What did she say? Grace handed him the letter. Dear Ms. Harmon, my name is Isabella Dawson. My father was Staff Sergeant Ray Dawson. I know you served with him. I know you were there when he died. My mother could not read your letters. The pain was too much. But I can. And I want to. I want to know who my father was, not the flag and the medal. The man. The person you ate breakfast with and told jokes with and trusted your life to. I want to know what made him laugh. What made him scared. What he talked about when he missed home. My mother says you are the only person left who can tell me. So I am asking. Please tell me about my dad. I have been waiting my whole life to hear. Silas put the letter down. His eyes were wet. Are you going to write back? I am going to do better than that. I am going to drive to San Antonio. I am going to sit across from that girl and tell her everything. Every story, every joke, every time her father showed me her picture at dawn like a prayer. That is a long drive. It is the most important drive of my life. Want company, you and Ranger? Yeah. I want company. They left the next morning. 3 hours to San Antonio. Grace rode with the letter in her pocket and Dawson's face in her mind. Isabella Dawson was waiting on her front porch. Tall, dark hair, her father's eyes, exactly her father's eyes. Grace saw them and the breath left her body. You look like him, Grace said. It was all she could manage. Everyone says that. Isabella came down the steps, looked at the wheelchair, at Grace's face. You were with him every day for 18 months. Tell me. They sat on that porch for 6 hours. Grace talked. Isabella listened. She told her about the morning coffees Dawson could not make. About the photograph that Dawson kissed every morning like a prayer. About the jokes that were not funny, but everyone laughed because Dawson's laugh was contagious. About the night before the IED when Dawson sat on a Humvee hood and stared at the stars and said, I am going to teach that girl to fish. First thing I do when I get home. He never got to, Isabella whispered. No, he did not. I do not know how to fish. Grace looked at her, at Dawson's eyes in a 16-year-old face. I will teach you. Isabella's face crumbled. Not sadness, relief. The relief of a girl who had spent 12 years with a folded flag and a silver star and an empty chair at the dinner table, finally meeting someone who could fill the silence with her father's voice. Really? Your father showed me your picture every single day, like looking at you was the thing that kept him breathing. Grace's voice broke. Rebuilt. I owe him everything. Teaching his daughter to fish is the least I can do. Ranger walked over to Isabella, sat at her feet, put his head on her knee. He does that, Silas said from the truck, when he knows someone needs it. Isabella put her hand on Ranger's head, cried into the fur of a dog who had been in the same blast that killed her father and had somehow survived to sit on this porch 12 years later, connecting the living to the dead. They drove back to Blackwell in silence. The good silence. The silence that happens after something broken finally heals. Grace held the letter against her chest. "Thank you," she said, "for walking into that diner. I mean it. If you had not walked in, Wade would have kept kicking. I would have kept hurting. The county would have kept being afraid. And I never would have had the courage to drive to San Antonio and meet that girl. You changed everything, Silas. With 2 words in a diner on a Tuesday morning. You changed everything when you said no. When you told Wade to get out. When you refused to crawl. I just showed up. You were the one who was already fighting. We both were. We just did not know it until that morning. Maybe that is how it works. Maybe the fight finds you when you're ready for it. Even if you do not feel ready. I did not feel ready. Neither did I. And look at us now." Silas glanced in the rearview mirror. Ranger was asleep in the back seat, paws twitching, dreaming of something only dogs dream about. "Look at us now, Tuesday morning. Nell's Diner, 7:08. Grace rolled through the door. Same booth, third from the door, left side, back to the wall, crutch leaning against the partition, not because she needed it for defense anymore. Because some habits are the architecture of a life, and you do not tear them down just because the storm is past. Earl was already there. Coffee, crossword, 72 years old and still showing up because that is what soldiers do. Morning Grace, morning Earl, sleep. Like the dead. First time in 11 years. The nightmare's gone. Not forever, I know that. They will come back, but last night for the first time since Ramadi they did not. That is everything. The door opened. Silas walked in. Ranger beside him. Same jacket, same flannel, same eyes that carried too much and refused to set any of it down. But something was different. The weight was still there. The ghosts were still there. But they had rearranged themselves. Found a purpose that made carrying them feel less like punishment and more like honor. He slid into the booth. Ranger went under the table. Morning, morning. Nell appeared. 3 coffees. No one had ordered. The usual, all 3 said simultaneously. They laughed. The sound of it filling the diner the way laughter fills a room that has been silent too long. Pete Garza was at the counter. He nodded at Grace. Grace nodded back. "I got a call this morning," Grace said. "From a veteran in Wyoming. His name is Carl Brennan. 61. Army, Desert Storm. Lost both legs. Lives alone on a ranch. A mining company has been pressuring him to sell for 3 years. How bad they cut his fence line. Poisoned his well. Filed false tax liens. The county sheriff will not return his calls. Sound familiar?" "Sounds like Tuesday. It is Tuesday. I told him we would come." "When this weekend, you, me, Ranger, Phoebe is already researching the mining company. Joanna is connecting us with the Wyoming AG's office. Finch is pulling financial records. Another fight. Another Tuesday." Silas looked at the diner, at the people eating breakfast, at the face of a county that was learning slowly and imperfectly beautifully how to be unafraid. "You know what Dawson would say right now?" Grace asked. "What he would say, Harmon, you stubborn woman. You survived an IED and a billionaire, and you are still sitting in the same booth drinking the same coffee." Grace's voice trembled with laughter and grief and love. "And then he would steal my toast. He always stole my toast. My squad did the same thing. Rivera would take my bacon every time. Said it was a leadership tax. Leadership tax. Dawson called it a friendship fee. Same thing. Same thing." They sat with that. 2 veterans, 2 wars, 2 sets of ghosts that had found their way from battlefields to a breakfast diner in Blackwell, Oklahoma, and had finally found a table where they could sit and rest. Earl raised his coffee. To the ones who did not come home. Grace raised hers. To Dawson. To Rivera. To every name on every wall. Silas raised his. To the ones who did come home. And found a reason to stay. They drank. Ranger's tail thumped against the booth leg. The steady rhythm of a dog who had found his place in the world and had no intention of leaving it. A small brass plaque had been mounted on the edge of Grace's booth. Nell had put it there the week after the trial. Simple. Clean. 5 words. The table where one woman refused to crawl. Not Wade's name. Not Harlan's. Not the Prescott Empire or the 20 years of fear or the 23 million in bribes or the senator or the sheriff or the silence. Just one woman. One table. One refusal. That is how empires fall. Not with armies, not with weapons, with a woman in a wheelchair who looks at power and says 2 words that cost nothing and change everything. Get out. A new morning. A diner filling up, a county waking without fear, a lantern that Nell hung by the door, not because the darkness was coming back, but because some lights are meant to burn as reminders. That this is a safe place. That the coffee is always ready. That if you walk through that door carrying something you cannot carry alone, someone will stand up. Someone always stands up. That is the lesson of Blackwell. That is the lessons of Grace Harmon and Silas Drummond and a German shepherd named Ranger, who walked into a diner on a Tuesday morning and found something worth fighting for. Not land, not oil, not money. The right of a woman to sit in her booth and drink her coffee and say no. The right of a community to make noise after 20 years of silence. The right of a veteran who gave her leg for her country to keep the dirt her father left her. The simplest rights. The hardest to protect, the most worth fighting for. And somewhere right now in a diner you have never heard of, in a county you will never visit, someone is being told to crawl. Someone is being kicked while 12 people look at their plates. Someone is being told that silence is safer than speaking up. And somewhere else a man is walking toward the door. He does not know what is inside. He does not know the names or the faces or the cost. He just hears something that sounds like someone who needs help. And he walks in. And he says 2 words. That is enough.